take every last one of you out.
The New Hampshire High School Football Show is brought to you by the New Hampshire State Liquor Commission's Division of Enforcement.
You got heart, charisma, and a lot of skill.
And now, here are your hosts, Pete Terrier and Dave Haley from NHSportsPage.com.
Clear eyes, full hearts.
Can't lose. Let's go play some football. Let's go.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of the New Hampshire High School Football Show. Getting to be playoff time around the Granite State. My name is Pete Terrier, along with my co-host Dave Haley from NHSportsPage.com. Dave, we missed you last week. So glad to have you back. And what we do know now that we're mid-October, some teams are officially in the playoffs. Some teams are going to be scrambling over the last couple of weeks of the regular season. And this is a real good time to be a football fan here in New Hampshire.
Yeah, it's all shaking out, which is nice. You saw, which I'm looking for. Nice thing is we both got in here right at the wire, so we haven't really talked about the games that we saw last night, but I really want to hear about your game that you were at. But that's a big one, so now Bedford will have home field advantage over Concord in the playoffs. But and I saw a pretty good football team myself last night. So
yeah, I was out in Bedford for the Concord-Bedford game. Dave went to Lebanon and had a great experience out there in Lebanon for the game. The Kennett Eagles against the Lebanon Raiders. We'll get you the scores for those two games, as well as all the rest of the scores around the state of New Hampshire from last night. Our scoreboard, as always, brought to you by our friends from the New Hampshire State Liquor Commission, that Division of Enforcement, and the Buyers Beware campaign, reminding all adults it's against the law to provide alcohol for minors. Even if you're having a NHSportsPage.com video camera out in Lebanon and there's a big tailgate party before the game, and then you get whooped by a big-time score by a really good football team.
on senior night.
On senior night, don't go out and commiserate with a keg around the campfire after the game. You just can't do it. It's against the law, right, Dave?
Absolutely. So we'll start in Division I. Londonderry takes care of business, and I think a really impressive win, 41-15 over Alvern. So and another game, just to throw another one at. So Salem wins 28-0 over Merrimack. Merrimack has sort of sunk like a stone the last few weeks, but that Londonderry-Salem game, we're all going to have to live with the fact one of those two teams is not going to the playoffs. They are a playoff team when you actually look at them on the field, but that will be, in theory only, because they're not going. So that is going to be a Halloween matchup, Londonderry at Salem. We're going to be there in 2 weeks, and both those teams take care of business last night. Nashua South was struggling with Keene, and somebody in the booth in Lebanon, we were up in the tower up there. They got a big tower up at Lebanon, said, what? Ask Pete what's going on with Nashua South. But Nashua South rights the ship, turns it on, has a huge second half, 52-27 win over Keene, so South takes care of business. Happy to see that. By the way, big shout out. I listened to the show last week when I got back from Pittsburgh.
New Hampshire, not Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, New Hampshire. Come on.
You got to clarify,
No, I told everyone I was going up north. They're first-time listeners. Where have you been? But Scott Knight sounded like a guy who had been in a concentration camp for a few months, and I appreciate him coming on the show after his team got blitzed the night before. I heard that video. I'm like, oh, what a great guy to come on the show after they lost that game. Because I asked him to come on, I think, on Wednesday, and then they got beat up by Alvern pretty good. So anyway, Scott Knight, all the respect in the world. Pinkerton is really good. 42-7 over Timberlane. That's not a bad Timberlane team. Pinkerton with a 42-7 win over Timberlane. They remain undefeated. Bedford in the game in overtime, in the game that Pete and the great John Kesty covered last night, 24-16 over Concord. I definitely want to talk about this. All I'm going to say is this, a little teaser. This game told me more about Concord than it did Bedford.
You think so?
Is this the most impressive Concord game of the year?
Yeah.
It is, right? And they lost.
They played well. They lost. And to me, they kind of lost it in the second half. Concord had control of the football game in the first half. I thought Bedford took control in the second half. Concord, they got a lot of magic. I mean, Robbie Law is a good quarterback. He's a great quarterback.
He's a winner.
They got a different cast of characters, mostly on offense beside him. I mean, Leo Sude missed a few games last year. He was one of many weapons last year.
Yeah.
He's really, along with Law, the only returning guy on offense, skill position-wise.
Jalen Stone, who's kind of
he's a brand-new receiver. Kid Jacob Lewis, Josh Ames. I mean, they got a bunch of guys that contributed, but not the same team and they're still a good football team. And if they don't make the playoffs, it's going to be a shame. But facts are facts. It's the way it is, and they got to roll with it. They have to win their final 2 games pretty much, and they need some help because Manchester Memorial, and we'll have Coach Colcord on in just a few minutes. He's coming in studio. They have the head-to-head tiebreak against Concord by beating them by a point.
Still a lot of work. Memorial's got it tough. We'll get into it.
Both
Memorial's
of those teams have really tough schedules.
Yeah. So I mentioned Salem beating Merrimack 28-0. One of the most entertaining games of the night. I was following this on Twitter. Portsmouth beats Winnicott 50-36, and Winnicott just doesn't have a defense that can stop anybody. So they can't get the stop when they need it. Connor DeCesare with another humongous game. He's the leading passer in the state with the statistics we keep on NASportspage.com.
Just under 500 yards passing. I was reading the story that Mike Z wrote online on Fosters.com, Seacoast Media Group, and he had just under 500 yards passing in the game. Last week when I was there for the Exeter game, he threw the ball 54 times.
54.
This week he did it on 38 passes. So he had some loading for Michelli, had a 200-yard receiving game. The sophomore Christian Pete had 3 touchdowns in that game receiving, and then a scoop and score on defense. This Portsmouth team can score. You mentioned Winnicott has problems stopping teams. This is the 3rd week in a row they've blown a big lead in the second half. This time they were down up 36-23 in the 4th quarter.
They're this year's Memorial. Memorial, Peter Colcord, last year's team, they could score. Stephen Dean, I think, was at quarterback for them. They had Dion Ball, we saw in the Chad game. But they couldn't stop anybody. And so when you can't stop anybody, that's what happens. You lose 50-36 games. McIsaac's telling me that there was no Justice Mass Clark last night for Portsmouth. Ozier got hurt, and Mikey tore as well, and Portsmouth still pulled it out. So really kind of gritty-gutty win for them. 50-36 over Winnicott. Exeter rolls over Dover. It's been a long year for Dover. They knew that. Much respect for that coaching staff. They got a lot of young kids, and they're just going to try to be, back in the conversation in the next year or two. But Exeter with a 42-12 win over Dover. Memorial, we're always happy, Pete, whether it be basketball, football, lacrosse, and our very seldom listened to dodgeball show. We love when our coaches are in good moods. Memorial 18. A 19-18 come from behind win over the Spalding Fighting McIsaac. So Manchester Memorial with a good W, so Coach Colcord will be in a very good mood. And he's going to be sitting 3 feet away from me, so that's always good news. We don't like angry coaches in the room with us. This surprised me. Conval 35, Hollis Brookline 21 in Division II, because Hollis Brookline was really set up to get to the playoffs in that division, but
they might still make it because there's no one else in that division.
It's not a good result. Sanborn with a 12-6, and this was a great game. This was a last-minute win. Sanborn, John Wells' team gets a nice W. They beat Monadnock, Linwood Patnode's Huskies 12-6. This was a really nick and tuck game the entire way, and they win it, I believe, in like the final moments. But 12-6, so Sanborn really right there takes a huge step towards the playoffs. Game I was at last night. Kennett with a 42-8 win over Lebanon. Watch the intro of this video just to see the mass of the UN of Lebanon students I was in the middle of. They had horns, they had flags, they had their, for breast cancer awareness, they had their hair colored pink. It was a scene over there. But Kennett, 42-8, we'll talk a lot about this game. Merrimack Valley comes back and shocks Laconia, 20-17. This was a big loss for Laconia. There's no other way to say it. They had to take care of business in this thing. And Lebanon is, I can tell you from talking to the kids, talking to coaches, they're absolutely watching Laconia, what they're doing, because they've got the tiebreaker because they beat them, but they knew they had lost to Kennett, and they were waiting. So now Kennett-Laconia next week. So Laconia's got to almost save their season next week.
How about Merrimack Valley overcoming the loss of Ivan Niamagabo, the UNH-bound quarterback who had a hand injury, a wrist injury, and he's out for the rest of the year. This kid Ian Curtin steps in, and they're 4-2. I mean, they're winning football games.
Oh, they're going to the
Ivan.
playoffs. They're going to the playoffs. Yeah, and that's a big win. Laconia was leading that. What did you say? They were up 14-0 or something? Yeah. So we'll get into that more. 2017, though, Merrimack Valley wins. Trinity with a nice W. Steve Burns, nice shout out for him. 28-24 win over Sauhegan. Those are two very good football teams, and that's a big win for Trinity.
Yeah, so Trinity has now beaten Milford and Sauhegan in back-to-back weeks.
Yeah.
Both of them at Gill Stadium, but that's impressive
It is.
for this Trinity team that we thought was down this year, and they're certainly proving that they're still a good football
Saiku
team.
Ba, has been tremendous. He's one of the leading rushers in that entire division. Ryan Baldwin, has been terrific. They've Steve Burns has done a nice job with that crew. He proved he could win with a veteran crew, and now he's proven if he's got a young team, he can mold it into something. So shout out to my buddy Steve. And final two scores: Newport, which is a wagon, who shamelessly beat my Guilford Golden Eagles 4 weeks ago, and I will never forgive them for it. 34-0 over Stevens. Paul Silva does such a good job, but Stevens is young. But 34-0, Newport with the win there. And Somersworth, we thought this game would be high scoring. 39-22. Somersworth, Elijah Joy had like 150 yards at halftime.
And finished with 300-something. Last week he had over
ridiculous.
400.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. He had like 42 carries. Over Bishop, Brady, Brendan Johnson, and those guys fall there. They, like Winnicott, don't have a defense. So, Brendan can toss it around all day long, and he's a good one. We like him a lot, but if you can't stop anybody, it leaves you little room for error. But 39-22 Somersworth, and Somersworth is set up to be the number 2 seed in that conference in Division III.
And let's look at some of the action today. You got Central at Goffstown. That game tonight at St. A's under the lights. So the Little Green taking on the Grizzlies should be an interesting game. You got BG at Nashua North. Two teams playing on their home field. One of them is the visitor. It looks like BG is the visitor in this one in their home stadium against the Titans. Division II, Kearsarge at Plymouth. Pembroke takes on Hanover. Kingswood at St. Thomas. You got John Stark traveling to Manchester to take on West. Pelham at Wyndham. Wyndham coming off a bye. I think we're going to be looking at Wyndham next week. We're going to send the video camera out there, I believe, for the game at Milford. Our one chance, really, to see Wyndham in the regular season.
I have a feeling we'll see Wyndham in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think we'll see him in the playoffs as well. D3, Bow is at Raymond today. Andrew Downey is a kid that has been Elijah DeJoy-like, running all over the football field, and he is got a tough task taking on the Falcons of Bow today. Yeah.
I got to say real quick, that Bow team has not given up, I believe, have not given up 150 yards rushing all season.
So this will be a true
yards.
test.
Yes. So Andrew Downey's going to have a lot of company today.
The other D3 games: Farmington, Newt at Campbell, Franklin at Mascoma, Winnisquam at Epping Newmarket.
There's only one I see, Pete. I don't know what games you're talking about. I only see one Division III game.
At Newfound?
That's not the game I was looking at.
Oh, Interlakes Molten Borough at your Guilford Golden Eagles.
Big one. So these kids were all like in Pop Warner together. Max Triano, my boy, the Guilford kids asked us to come, said, please come to this game. It's a big rivalry game. We're friends with these Interlakes kids. They beat us in the playoffs last year. But selfishly, our videographers, the great John Kesty and Jen Chick, have lives to live and families to take care of, and they're not going to the game. I'm just very disappointed in both of them.
And Guilford
breaking
hoping,
hearts,
are they hoping for
shattering
a little
dreams.
redemption? Because they got knocked out of the playoffs by the Lakers last year.
John Francis, as the coach at Interlakes, does a really good job. And they've got a kid, Andrew Brothers. I wrote about him. He's a freshman. He's got 5 touchdowns in his last 2 games for Interlakes. So Interlakes, he does a great job over there with that program. But no, that'll be a lot of fun. We're going to see Guilford in the playoffs. I promised them we're going to get out and see the Golden Eagles. So I'm going to take the great John Kesty to Patrick's Pub up in Guilford. We're going to have a good time.
All right, there's your scoreboard and your schedule for today. We'll take a timeout, come back. We'll get into the games that both of us were at. Dave at Lebanon and Kennett, find out how good this Eagles team really is. And I'll talk about the Bedford-Concord game a little bit later. We got Pete Colcord from Manchester Memorial, his team, surviving a scare last night at Shabbat McDonough Field at Memorial High School. Just getting past a Spalding team, 19-18. We'll have Coach Colcord in studio. All that and more when the New Hampshire High School Football Show returns on News Radio 96.7 and WGIR 610.
These guys know their high school football. It's the New Hampshire High School Football Show with Pete Terrier and Dave Haley.
Yeah, we do it each and every Saturday morning during the New Hampshire high school football season, live on the radio. 2 fine stations here in New Hampshire. News Radio 610 in and around Manchester. Also, the Seacoast signal for you at 96.7 FM. I am Pete. He's Dave. I really missed you last week. It's nice having you back. I appreciate Joe Marcellina from the Telegraph and nh-highschoolsports.com coming in and sitting in for you. But it's just good to have you back. I mean, I like the flow that we got. I love the stories that you got to tell me on a Saturday morning after you were out at a football field. And last night, no different. It didn't disappoint when you were in Lebanon. You didn't see a great football game. You did see a great football team. The Kennett Eagles win 42-8 over the Lebanon Raiders. But what an atmosphere you had out there in Lebanon.
It was a good half. But yeah, they so KJ Maddie, who's the All-State, probably be a first-team preseason All-State guard for Lebanon. He and his father, Keith, who's a good friend and has been great, really a big supporter of you and I and on our website.
And the coach of the Lebanon Raiders.
Oh, yeah. I always feel like everyone should know that. Yeah, he's been there, 15 years, he was saying. But they set up, they were tailgating before the game. So I didn't pull any Frank the Tank moves and go over there and hang out with the high school kids. But they were really fired up for the intro. So we actually shot an intro before the game. And it went really well. The kids were great. But then KJ texted his dad. We were in the tower during the first half, and he's like, tell Dave to come back. He's like, we got more. Like, more people showed up. So we're like, all right, let's just do it again. So we went back there, did it again. And
Take 2.
Oh, it was like 150 kids around. You'll see it on the preview. And the first question I asked, I interviewed Will Pollard, Nate Arnold, Nick Graziano, and Jacob Cameron. They're big defensive tackle lineman. He's just a monster. First question I said, this is your open mic. What do you want to say to Pete Terrier, who still doesn't put you in his top 10? Like, he's got Bo over you. Like, what do you want to say? Spoiler alert.
A 3-3 Goffstown team ahead of you.
Spoiler alert, they don't agree with you. But they were very, very happy we were there, and they were super. Von Beckwith, their coach, was great. You know, he was terrific. Also want to mention Mike Holderman, the old coach there that kind of set this up, and he took a coaching job down in North Carolina, I believe. He was texting during the game with one of his friends, and he said, geez, Dave Haley's finally at a game, and I'm in North Carolina. But so it was a really fun atmosphere. The kids were appreciative. Kennett is big on the line. Pollard reminds me, watch him on film, he reminds me a lot of James Caparell, which is obviously a huge compliment.
Yeah.
Big kid, can throw the football. Here's the problem. We see this a lot with good quarterbacks in high school. He has some kids who don't catch that well. He's got some kids who catch pretty well, but, I mean, he threw an interception last night. He hit his guy in the hands, and it bounced off the guy's hands, and in Lebanon picked it off. He's got a great arm. In warm-ups, he was tossing 40-yard bombs in stride to people, but they were dropping some of them, even in warm-ups. So get this guy, like, some better receivers, and he's got some good kids there, but he can be terrific. He can run the football. They got a good line. They like to run Nate Emerson and Nate Arnold and on like the sweep, you know, where they come across, you know, like the wide receiver comes across and they kind of hand out. You know, they do that with Edelman sometimes, the Patriots. They don't have like that huge running back who gets like a ton of yards for them, but they have a really, really good defense. Graziano is a good safety. They're very big on the line. They're very well coached. I said to them in the pregame, they're very professional feel. Like they don't get too up. The kids are really have no stupid penalties. They don't have, you know, a couple holding calls, but that's it. They hold on to the football. They didn't fumble. And the only problem I see with this team, the only one, if I could nitpick here, they don't have a kicker. Like they go for 2 almost every time. And one kid at the end of the game tried an extra point and it wasn't close. So that could be a problem when you're playing Wyndham or you're playing, St. Thomas or whomever, like in the playoffs, like a big game. You can't always get in the end zone. That's the one thing, but this is an excellent football team.
And you look ahead at their schedule, and they've got Laconia. You talked about this. They're coming in to Conway on Friday night, next Friday night. That's going to be a huge game, especially for Laconia. Laconia really needs to win that game. Now they need it.
Laconia now has put
if they want to make the playoffs, they pretty much need to win that game after losing to Merrimack Valley last night, even with the loss by Lebanon, because Lebanon beat them by 1 in the regular season opener. And Laconia, you were talking about going for 2 or having to go for 2. Laconia went for 2 in the win, and they didn't get it, and they lost by 1 point. Kennett finishes up in Wolfboro against Kingswood, so that's a game that they should definitely win. So it looks like Kennett is pretty much in the playoffs. I don't think they've actually clinched yet for sure, but they're putting themselves in real good position. You've now seen Laconia. You've seen St. Thomas, another one of the D2 heavyweights. How would you say Kennett matches up with a St. Thomas? I know Laconia, I think, played the perfect game that night that they played St. Thomas and beat St. Thomas 35-28. We were both there. How do you think Kennett compares to a team like St. Thomas?
I think Kennett is, it'd be fun. I think they're a little better along the lines. I think their defense is definitely better than St. Thomas's defense. But I think St. Thomas has a kicker, and they have an offense that can score. They're both deep. Wow, that'll be a really good football game, honestly. Yeah, very, very good. I think I would make Kennett a 3-point favorite at this point.
Over St. Thomas?
Yeah, but good coaching staffs. That'd be a fun game.
Right.
Kennett's very strong, like all over the place. Big kids.
Not having seen Wyndham in person, either one of us this year.
Saw him last year.
But knowing what we know about what Wyndham has brought back from last year and how they're all playing this year, do you think Wyndham is the best team? And it's hard to say that without having seen them.
Yeah.
But an educated opinion nevertheless.
I think I think I've seen them pretty high in these power polls, and I don't disagree with it. I think they are that good. And when we talked to Coach Raycraft, when I talked to him on the phone in the preseason, and we had him on the radio show, he knows they're good. They know they're good. The problem is, and I brought this up with Coach Beckwith after the game when I interviewed him, I said, the thing is Kennett's going to get some tough games. They're going to have a tough game against Laconia. They played a tough game at Merrimack Valley. Remember, Kennett won on opening weekend at Merrimack Valley when even Ivan was there. So Wyndham's problem is they may not have a tough game all season long, and that really hurts you when you get into a playoff game. And it is going to be, we've been to these games. They're back and forth, and one huge turnover looks like you're going to lose the game, but you can still pull it out. Wyndham doesn't have the benefit of having tight football games. I mean, I think they're just going to roll into the playoffs. I think they're going to roll in the first round of the playoffs. So, well, actually, I don't know. I mean, they'll probably get Trinity's, and Trinity's playing better. But anyway, that's one thing is that Wyndham, that could hurt. When teams cruise like that all season long, it can really hurt you.
Let's talk about where I should have Kennett in there. I mean, in my power poll ballot, I'll just run it down quickly. This is after last week's play, so things may change. I'm not sure they are because everybody pretty much hung tough. I got Pinkerton 1, Bedford 2, Salem 3, Wyndham 4, Londonderry 5, and I really think 2 through 5, you could toss those up in the air, and wherever they fell, I'd be okay with that. But that's the way I have it. Concord 6, even though they lost last night, might keep them there. I got Exeter 7, Portsmouth 8. I got Goffstown 9 and Bow 10. So if I'm going to put Kennett in, and I've considered them for those spots 9 and 10, the reason I had Goffstown in there is because Goffstown's been very competitive against the top of the league. The best teams in the state, Goffstown has been there.
Yeah.
And they're 3-3, and maybe they don't deserve to be there, but they've played well enough to be there.
Well, and they lost to Concord without their starting quarterback and their running back, Connor Bork.
Exactly. That was week 1, though, a long time ago.
Right, but I mean...
They also lost to Portsmouth, and I don't think there's any shame in that. I got Portsmouth ranked 8 in the league, one step ahead of Goffstown.
Been really impressive.
And who else did Goffstown lose to? Bedford. And they lost by a touchdown to Bedford just last week.
Oh, no question.
And it was a late touchdown. So I feel pretty okay about having Goffstown in there, despite a 3-3 record. And I got Bow in there because they have been just flat out dominant.
No, I like
in
the
Division
UF.
3.
Listen.
And I'd rather have Bow in there than, let's say, Manchester Memorial or Nashua South.
You're talking to the right guy because you're talking to a guy who gets into Lisbon-Littleton basketball games. So I love that you have Bow in there. I think Bow belongs in there because they not only been the best team, they're not only the defending champions, they've been absolutely dominant. I mean, they're blowing teams out. But Kennett belongs in there. You got to snake somebody out of there.
All right, here's what needs to happen.
Kennett should be 6th or 7th.
Here's what needs to happen. And if I had them in there, they wouldn't be 6th or 7th, I can tell you that. But I haven't seen them. I'm going to watch the full game on film.
Oh, God, the play-by-play gets a little rough in the fourth quarter.
Well, that's okay.
It's running time, you know how it goes. I think I made the comment, if it's running time, I ain't talking. How you gonna do?
Well, here's what needs to happen. Ryan Ray, I'll text him. I need him to beat Goffstown tonight so Goffstown can go off my ballot, and then I can move Kennett in. How about that? If that happens,
It's your ballot, man.
if that happens, then Kennett can find a spot
I'll
on
tell
my
you,
ballot.
Jake Cameron is about 6'3", 225, all muscle. Why don't you just go tell Jake Cameron he's not in the top 10? You should go meet him up in North Conway.
I think I will pass on that.
They'll be fun to watch on film, I can tell you that.
All right, I'm looking forward to it. That should be up on the site at some point this morning. I know the Concord Bedford video has been uploaded. We're looking to get that on the website, nhsportspage.com as well. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. Pete Colcord from Manchester Memorial is going to be coming in here soon. I also want to talk about that Concord Bedford game that I was at because it was a phenomenal game. Went to overtime. Bedford won it 24-16. It is the New Hampshire High School Football Show. News Radio 610 and 96.7.
And 96.7.
Heading up towards the top of the hour, 9 o'clock on your Saturday morning, October the 18th. It is week 6 of the New Hampshire High School football season, and just a couple of weeks left to go. And then the playoffs start. I mean, it's hard to believe. Regular season finale weekend is that Friday night, Halloween night, October 31st, and then Saturday, November 1st, and then the playoffs start a week later on Saturday, November 8th. We're going to have Pete Colcord, head coach of the Manchester Memorial Crusaders. His team looks playoff bound at this point. They're 5-2, coming off a victory last night against Spalding, 19-8. A little bit of a nail biter. People might have thought that Memorial would handle the Red Raiders a little bit more easily, but it was down to the wire, as a lot of these Memorial games have been. We'll talk to Coach Colcord once he gets in here. Dave Haley out there in the parking lot trying to flag him towards the radio station, as sometimes this is a little hard to find. We'll get him on. I was at a phenomenal game last night in Bedford where I saw the Bulldogs improve to 7-0 on the season with a 24-16 overtime win against the Concord Crimson Tide, the defending champs in Division I. Concord loses for the second time, so they're really in the tie right now with Memorial for that final playoff spot in the Division I North Conference. Bedford has clinched their spot in. They are undefeated. As I said, at 7-0. They're in. They're going to host whoever comes out of that division besides Bedford, and it's Memorial right now holding the tiebreak over Concord by virtue of a 14-13 win just a couple of weeks ago. Dave, you're back. I see you're back. You didn't find the coach. Is he still out there?
I got him. Listen, I told him, I said, if John Kesty was giving you directions, you would have been sitting here eating a bagel, but you got me. So he's coming. He's such a good guy. He's coming. He's probably listening to us. He should be coming down the road.
So you talked earlier about how the game last night told you more about Concord than it did about Bedford. Why so?
Well, I just think that that's the most impressive result they've had all year, which sounds kind of funny because they lost the game. But that win over Goffstown gave me a lot of pause and concern about them because Goffstown was playing without their two best offensive players. Not to take anything away from Christian Marquise, by the way. He's a very good player for Goffstown. But I think going into Bedford last night, and again, Jacob, how do you say Jacob's last name?
Zoltz.
Zoltz out for the season, and to go in there and go to overtime against a team that you and I think most people believe is the second best team in New Hampshire, and almost win that game, lead for a lot of it. I think that tells me Concord's got a lot of fight in them. You know, I think Eric Brown deserves a lot of credit. I know they lost, but I was impressed.
Great guy. Love Eric Brown.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny because after the game, we usually only interview the winning coach, but it was such a good game last night. And
guy's the champ.
So much respect I have for Eric Brown and what he's done with that Concord program over the years, getting them back to relevance and championship caliber play. You know, I go up to him afterwards and he's like, "Haven't seen you all year. Where you been?"
I know. We haven't had him on the show.
I know. We gotta find a way to make that happen.
This feels like an off-the-air conversation. The other guy I really want to have on the show is Chris Sanborn from Plymouth. We gotta have him on.
He'd be fun to talk to.
Yeah.
You know, just talking about the experience of
Eric
taking
Brown's
over
gonna be
after
like, what
Lebanon.
the heck? We saw Eric Brown every other weekend last year.
Well, I think you know, we covered Concord a lot last year.
Well, they played Pinkerton. They played Bedford.
They had a lot of big games. We kind of knew what Concord was this year, and we were trying to spread the wealth and get around to a bunch of different games. And we had this one pegged at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
You know, back on September 1st, we were like, okay, October 17th, Concord at Bedford, that's a game that we want to cover. So, you know, it's a marquee game. Bedford played very, very well, especially in the second half. Concord controlled this thing in the first half.
Yeah.
And it was running with Leo Sude and Josh Ames and Robbie Law, throwing the ball around. A lot of passes, short passes. Bedford's got a crazy, crazy pass rush, and they were in Law's face, and Law was cool under pressure and just dumping it off. It was kind of like Matt Swarmstead that night against St. Thomas when the defense, the rushers, were all over him, and he would hold it and hold it and hold it till the very last second before he's going to get crushed and toss it away, and a big gain down the field like a screen pass.
Will Pollard made that exact throw last night. Same throw, where he waited in the pocket, waited, and then threw a lofted perfect pass. I was just looking at Concord's remaining schedule. Wow, did you already go over this? Portsmouth at home and then at Exeter.
Yeah,
Woo.
yeah. Well, Memorial's got it pretty tough, too.
Yeah, they do.
I mean,
they do.
Memorial's got to play Exeter in Exeter, and then they got to go to Goffstown and play them on Saturday,
Those are
November 1st.
Really hard games, yeah. On the road.
So, hey, Memorial's not a shoe-in for the playoffs.
No.
And we'll talk with Coach Colker once he finally does get in here. But it's not going to be easy. So Concord's not dead yet.
Yeah.
They're not dead yet.
No, not at all. I mean, but if they'd won last night, I think they were in the driver's seat. So we shall see. I was impressed that they fought like that, and that not fought. You knew those kids would fight, and Coach Brown would have them ready. But they showed they have enough to play with one of the best teams in the state. Because look, as good as Portsmouth's been, and I think Portsmouth has gotten better because those kids were young and the coaching staff is so good. But Portsmouth got rolled by Bedford, and last night Concord went in, and that was at home. And Concord went into Bedford last night and played them toe-to-toe the entire game.
Mike Bayless had another big game, 3 touchdowns in the game, 91 yards on the ground, 82 passing, so he balanced it a little bit on offense. The big thing for me was out of the halftime break, Bedford went 73 yards on a scoring drive. First time they touched the ball, Bayless had a 20-yard touchdown run to cap that drive, and they ended up getting the point after kick for a 10-8 lead. It stayed that way for a while. A little bit later, Bayless got another touchdown. It became 16-8. They missed the PAT, leaving Concord an opening where they would have to go down, get a late drive, and score a touchdown, and then tie it with a 2-point conversion. Robbie Law, I don't want to say single-handedly, but engineered a tremendous drive. 4th down plays. He was under pressure again, able to get it away, making some runs. There were some penalties against Bedford that helped him out a little bit. But what a cardiac kid type of drive by Robbie Law. And then the 2-point conversion, it was deflected and it bounced right into the hands of a Concord receiver, Kevin Condick, to tie the game. And then Bedford had a chance maybe to win the game on their final possession. Didn't work out. We went to overtime. Bedford scored on their first possession. They got the ball first in overtime. A couple of Mike Bayless runs. They were up. And then there was a flag against Concord on the PAT kick. So instead of making it a 7-point lead for Bedford, they accepted the penalty against Concord, and then they got a 2-point conversion with Bayless running it in. So they were up 8 in the overtime, forcing Concord to have to not only score a touchdown, but get another 2-point conversion. And Concord couldn't even get the touchdown. This kid from Bedford, John Hoagland, who hadn't played all year, had a broken hand he suffered in preseason, knocks it down on 4th down and goal, and the celebration was on in Bedford. And after the game, I was going down on the field to do the interviews, and Ryan Brown from the Bedford basketball team's like, "Hey, Pete Terry, you didn't answer my tweet." And, I'm busy during the game. I got a lot going on. But he tweeted me something about the Bedford student section. And, wow, they were loud.
Oh, really?
And there was a lot of them. And I really felt that, especially on that final sequence where Concord was trying to score in the overtime, it was crazy loud, and it was really hard to hear. And, boy, I thought the crowd really helped out. I thought that home field actually made a difference in that game.
Yeah, that's good to know because sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I think that when Exeter gets home field against Portsmouth down the road, I don't think it'll be that big of a deal because it's only 2 exits down. It's the same turf and so forth and so on. So good to see that Bedford makes it a home field. Lebanon did everything they could to make it a good home field, but it didn't quite pan out.
All right, our guest has arrived. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back with Coach Pete Colcord from Manchester Memorial. Well, I'm not going to say it, but they're looking like a playoff team right now. They haven't quite clinched it, and the coach is like, don't say it. We'll talk to him when we come back. The New Hampshire High School Football Show. News Radio 610 and 96.7.
Back to the best local coverage of New Hampshire high school football on the New Hampshire High School Football Show. Saturday mornings from 8 to 9 on News Radio 610 and 96.7.
Joining us in studio is the head coach of the Manchester Memorial Crusaders, who improved to 5-2 on the season with a nail-biter 19-18 win over Spalding last night at Manchester Memorial High School. Coach Colcord, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you coming in.
Thanks, Pete and Dave. I appreciate you inviting me in here.
So finding this place was probably about as difficult as holding off Spalding last night. I mean, I look at these scores on a Saturday morning, or I follow them what's going on Friday night, and I'm like, wow, I thought Memorial would have an easier time, but I should know that it just isn't easy. I mean, every week it's a difficult test no matter who you play.
Yeah, that's it. Division I is very, very tough, and I don't care what the records are of the teams you face. It's always a hard game, and you need to come prepared to play every time out.
Where are you right now with the quarterback? Because I know you had Isaac Valenz in there quarterback, but then you moved. It was
Mitch Coy.
Mitch Coy. What are you doing now? Is it rotating, or have you set on one of the two, or what's going on?
No, it depends on the situation. We're moving in and out. They both pass. They both run. They both got things that they do better, but we're trying to keep everybody guessing, and sometimes me too.
Well, let's talk about the play that Velez made last night to put you guys up on top. Midway through the fourth quarter, from what I read in Roger Brown's story in the New Hampshire Union Leader today, says that Velez is at quarterback. The shotgun snap to him. He fumbles the ball or doesn't come up with it cleanly, but a little bit of luck. Bounces right to him, or he goes after it and gets it, and off to the races for the touchdown that put you guys on top.
Yeah, we were running our stretch play, which we ran all night, and he got most all of his yardage on. So, we prefer that they not fumble the ball, but everybody carried out what they were supposed to do, and he picked it up, and being such a phenomenal athlete, he was able to do what he did.
I think it's all about defense with you guys this year, and I've said before, you guys had terrific offenses last couple of years, and that's what you guys were known for. But Winnicott, I said earlier, was the team that reminded me of you last year, where it was like you were losing 50-36 and so forth. But this defense has been terrific. I mean, you're playing good football teams, and you're holding them to under 20 points or right around. I want to know who's been the guys that have stepped up, who have been the best players on defense for you, because that's been a huge turnaround for you guys.
Yeah, we in the offseason, we're going to make defense our focus because we have played so badly. We knew that we could score at will pretty much last year and the year before that, but we couldn't stop a 6-year-old Pop Warner team on defense. So we committed to that, and we've got some really strong kids on there. Sam Gillott, who plays our Mike linebacker, has done an outstanding job. He had that big game against Concord with 22 tackles and 3 sacks. Nate Hall has been tremendous as an outside backer for us. He's also one of our running backs who does a great job. But our defensive line has been tremendous, too. Last night we used 8 players at the defensive end spot. We rotated them through to keep them fresh,
wow.
And they did a tremendous job. And they're all young kids. Most of them are all coming back next year for us. So we're pretty encouraged about what we have in the future as well.
Another kid that has been making plays for you guys all year long, and I remember running into you. It was Cinco de Mayo. I'm out doing a promotion
I wouldn't
with
have remembered
Sister
bumping
Station
into him
Rock
on Cinco de
101.
Mayo, no.
I run into Coach Colcord and his wife Sue, who are just coming back from a trip to the Bahamas or something like that. And he's talking about Daquan Henkelwood and the speed and the attention that he's getting from recruiters from college. This kid is just an athlete. Him and Velez, two of the best athletes you guys have probably coached at Memorial in your time there.
Yeah, they're right up there, if they're not the best. And with Daquan, we could see it in him, the ability that he had. But like a lot of juniors that we've had through the years, they don't seem to step up to the maximum potential until they're seniors. Something clicks when they're a senior. and it certainly has clicked with those kids. Not that they didn't play great last year. They gave us everything they had, especially like Isaac. He always goes 110 miles an hour, no matter what he's doing. But something special's happened when they become seniors, and I don't know if it's because they know it's their last year playing high school ball, or it's their turn, or what it is. But I think that's what's happened with some of these kids, the seniors.
There's something about senior-laden teams, in high school sports where they get it, and they probably, now they have that leadership thrust upon them, and they know it's their turn, and something comes out. It brings out the best in a lot of kids. I don't even know how to phrase this as a question, but this has just got to be so much fun for you. You know what I mean? After the last few years, and that to be right in the mix and winning big games. God, you guys beat Concord. I mean, this has got to be a lot of fun for you and the staff and the kids. I mean, the kids must come to practice every day just ready to roll, I would imagine.
Yeah, they come to work, but it's been funny because it's not like we're in a playoff run or a championship run or any of that. They just come. It's practice. It's Monday we're doing films and lifting and install, and Tuesday we're out there in full pads, and it's just going back to work. They're not overly excited about it.
Yeah.
You can tell there's an excitement there, but it's just every day as usual.
They expect to be good. Yeah.
I want to find out, and I'm reading, as I said, from Roger's story and the union leader, Roger Brown, and he's talking about how you guys were kind of monitoring what was going on in Bedford. I know personally I was texting your wife with updates, and she was very appreciative of that. I just told her, hey, there's this thing called Twitter. Get on it, and you can follow anything, and I don't have to, text someone. But it was cool. It's fine. I love your wife. She's great. But so you guys were actually following what was going on during the game? I mean, Dave has said they don't care, I think you guys did care, right?
We cared. Thanks for giving a shout out to my wife. I love her too. She's done a great job for us. But she asked me before the game started. She said, "I'm texting with Pete, and he's going to give me updates on the score. Do you want to know?" And I said, "During halftime, but I don't want to."
Okay.
I'm not going. During the game, no, absolutely not. So she told me at halftime, and then I never thought of it again until it was over. And Roger had, I don't know if it was Twitter or
He's
what,
got this thing called Twitter on his phone,
yeah, I
I'm
know.
sure.
Well, I'm old, Pete, and I'm lucky if I can turn the computer on.
You know what? Second thought, you probably don't want to get on Twitter because your kids are on Twitter, and you probably don't want to see what some of these kids are.
They behave pretty well.
About.
I got Daquan and Isaac and those kids. They're fine. They're good. They're doing just fine.
Well, it's amazing how sometimes kids don't realize that once you hit send, it's out there and people can see it.
I think kids have been, since the Pat Wells thing, I think kids have been pretty good on Twitter, actually. I think there's been an improvement lately. I think a lot of teams talk about it.
We only got about a minute left, so we got to start saying goodbye and thanks for coming in. It took you more time to find the place than you did to actually get on the radio, but we want to say congratulations on clinching the Turkey Bowl. First time since 2009. Memorial's going to be in the game. You're going to be playing Trinity. More work to do before you get where you really want to go. You obviously want to be in the playoffs. You got a tough schedule. You got Exeter. You got Goffstown, both of them on the road. Concord's also got a tough schedule, too. It's going to be a lot of fun these last couple of weeks, so thanks for coming in.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me here.
And we look forward to seeing how this thing shakes out. You know what? It's going to come down to that November 1st game. Is that an afternoon game at Goffstown?
Yes, it is.
It's been a great race. I'm telling you. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a tough division, and it's nice to be competitive in it, and we're looking forward to seeing what's going to happen all the way through.
All right, Dave, here's your 15 seconds on Notre Dame.
Sports Center live from Tallahassee all week, so we got a big one today. And I called it right 3 straight weeks, the exact score, so let's just do it. 38-35, overtime. You know who wins. Fighting Irish. 7-0, baby.
For Pete Goldthorpe,
Everett Goulston,
and Dave Haley, John Cassidy from NHSportsPage.com. Have a good weekend, everybody.